Good evening to you both. And let's begin with a notable anniversary. It was 1 year ago, Calgary's biggest feeder main burst, forcing the city into a state of local emergency and months of repairs and water restrictions.
Just all of a sudden one day the water ended and we had no water and there was no communication from the city for hours.
1 year later, a new monitoring system is in place and the city administration says the repaired pipe is in good shape.
We're now monitoring it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and since that's gone into effect, we've only heard 9 wire snaps. So we know the repairs that we've made are holding.
City Council approved $1 billion for infrastructure repairs last November, and now the mayor says more investment is needed, and soon.
Infrastructure is more than pipes and concrete. It's the foundation of our quality of life.
And while the city has announced plans for additional water main feeder lines, civil engineering experts say everyone should pay attention to water consumption and how that water gets to homes.
No matter how much water you think you have, you should probably be aware of how much water you're using. You don't go and drive your car without knowing how much it costs you to fill it up.
One internal review and an external audit found multiple factors contributed to last year's break and that the city was adequately prepared with regular inspections. Tom, we'll go to you first as a Calgarian. What's your biggest takeaway from the feeder main rupture 1 year removed?
We have to think about water, okay? We take it for granted. And this last year, I've been thinking about, I'm gonna plant some grass seed, but then I thought, I gotta water that. And I have this automated watering system, which I have not had the courage to connect. But now, based on the city reassuring me, I'm gonna connect it and program it very carefully. You may remember last year, we had those day restrictions and time of day restrictions. They've told us we don't need to expect them this year, but it could happen. Obviously, if another disaster happens or if we get a drought or something like that, I'm going to try to get that grass seed growing before that happens.
Danielle, it was a crisis situation. Calgarians had to deal with it for months. How much do you think the rest of us throughout Alberta have learned from that experience?
Oh, I think that it was quite a lesson, in infrastructure, in the way that the feeder pipe could break down. I know not just in Alberta, but other municipalities across Canada, actually internationally, it made them think, wait a minute, have we done inspections? Have we checked ours? Because that could happen to us. If you remember, we actually got our feeder pipe fixed from the States. So there's this really interrelated system when it comes to water and infrastructure. So it was a good lesson for everybody.
Tom, lots of dialogue around infrastructure and water, but the politics also played a role in all of this. How do you see the state of infrastructure in our municipalities, big or small, factoring now into October municipal elections?
Yeah, well, nobody likes to pay more taxes. And in Calgary, our taxes went up 8.9% this year. Now, you got to be fair. The province took a lot of that. Okay, their share went up over 17%. But, and so city council was reasonably responsible. That doesn't mean they're going to get reelected. There's an election in October, and the mayor's job is up for grabs. The city council's up for grabs. There are a lot of credible candidates coming out there. So water is going to be an issue for sure because people don't like to not have water.
Yeah, and adding to that equation as well will be the introduction of political parties. Okay, let's move on. Lingering dialogue around the provincial government targeting books in school libraries was just over a week ago. 4 graphic novels were flagged as containing sexually explicit material. School boards in Edmonton and Calgary immediately pulled the books off shelves. Speaking on CTV Morning Live in Calgary, the minister responsible says the province does not have data on how often the books may have been accessed by students. And Dimitros Nicolaides says, despite what some special interest groups are saying, it was parental concerns that led to the books being flagged.
I don't think pressure from any specific group or organization has pushed the government to take this action. I've decided to move forward in firming up some of the guardrails that we have because I don't think it's appropriate for elementary age kids to be able to access material that has graphic depictions of oral sex, as an example.
Now, those who work in school libraries say children are never unsupervised when picking out books and that educators guide students to age-appropriate material.
Still some work to be done here by the government to prove that we've got a real problem.
While the province has not banned any books from schools, it has launched a survey to collect feedback on what should be stocked on school library shelves. Danielle, what kind of conversation do you feel the Smith government has opened up here, and how does that play into our current political dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, when that press release came out, I admit I was pretty skeptical when it comes to government showing us what material we should read or not read. I think that's something that we always need to pay close attention to. I have to say, they were not stellar examples of material that people would want young children to read. But as the librarian that you featured discussed, there is a lot of controls, which I think is important to keep in mind. I also think we really need to think about if the federal government is the right place for this conversation when we have local government, school boards, who are maybe better suited, as well as the librarians, the people in the schools themselves. This is really potentially opening up a similar discussion to things that we see in the United States. They're usually a little bit ahead of us on these culture war conversations. And I think now we're seeing that here. So it could get a little bit nasty.
Tom, where do you see this heading, and what's weighing on the shoulders of the government and triggering this conversation?
I agree with Danielle. I mean, in the States, you're seeing To Kill a Mockingbird, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison being pulled off the shelves. I was very happy to hear one thing about this, which is they don't know what books kids are reading. The minister said that, and I thought, well, that's good, because we'd be in a real surveillance state if they tracked every single thing. I got to tell you, my own parents, wanting to dodge that big question, where do babies come from, left a book in the freezer room for me to find. And I read it cover to cover 3 times. And so that was my own sex education. I hope we still leave books like that in there. Most schools are either elementary schools or junior high schools or high schools. In fact, I looked it up. In Alberta, only 10 to 15% of the schools are K to 12. And they're in rural areas. And let's face it, rural kids get their sex education of all kinds, pretty quickly on the farm. So I think the reality is the government should back off a little bit. But I have to agree with Danielle. Some of the covers there look like things you wouldn't want an 8-year-old to read.
Calgary's tourism sector is bracing for a busy season ahead, and it begins with the soon-to-arrive G7 Leaders Summit.
Hotels have actually already started filling up with security service personnel.
According to the Calgary Hotel Association, the international gathering will account for upwards of 50,000 hotel room nights in Calgary alone, generating more than $13 million in revenue, and will providing an economic boost in the short term. What could be more valuable is the legacy of hosting the event.
We will have everyone coming in, but hopefully they have a great experience depending on what they're coming in for. They get to, see Calgary, the Rockies. So the hope is that it'll bring, thousands of folks back over the coming years because they'll just see how great of a destination Calgary and the Bow Valley is.
And a note for flyers navigating the travel season ahead. The Calgary airport will have an increased security presence.
Especially during an event such as the G7, there will be an enhanced enforcement, and the enforcement will be swift to ensure that the safety for everyone. We're preparing for an exceptionally busy summer ahead.
Okay, just how busy? Well, last summer saw roughly 64,000 passengers through the airport daily. This year, pegged at more than 67,000. Danielle, when you add annual events like Stampede to that equation, Calgary's expected to see a record-breaking number of travelers this summer. What does that say not only about the city as a destination, but maybe Alberta's place on the international stage?
Well, we do have the Rocky Mountains, Michael, which are, our crown jewel. Lots of people love to come see them. It's an amazing experience. And I think with more and more emphasis being on internal travel in the country, now that we're having some, let's say, issues with our neighbors to the south, then you're going to see more travel. So I'm excited that Alberta is being seen as a positive destination. We can't do anything about our weather. It is what it is. But during the summer, it's a great time to visit.
Well, Tom, how prepared do you think your fellow Calgarians are for not only the short-term impact of this G7 summit in a matter of days, but for this whole summer ahead?
I have a personal story about this. When you come up to an intersection and you think, well, I might just get across, the light's just turning, but what if there's no room for me on the other side? Well, that happened to me this week near downtown Calgary. And sure enough, I did the right thing. I held back. All of a sudden, 3 police motorcycles just flaming into the intersection. Very angry looking dude pushing people back. You go over there. And I was really glad that I stayed where I did. And the reality is a 50-car, maybe more motorcade came through. So we're already practicing in Calgary for the VIP motorcades that are going to be traversing the city. So, that's certainly something that we are ready for. I want to throw one more thing in. The Rotary International people are converging on Calgary. There's 1.4 million of them worldwide. 20,000 or so are going to be here. And believe it or not, many of the events, like the G7, has nothing for the average person. But many of the Rotary events do have some public component. And there's even one that's going to take place the day after, so on June 26th. It's about the guy who was the president of the Rotary Club of Calgary in 1919. Suffice it to say, there's a mountain named after him in Alberta. And if you want to know about him, go to jameswheelerdavidson.com and maybe join us at this one-day event.
Yeah, that's a lot of folks coming to Calgary for that one, and just in the wake of G7. Okay, for us, one more topic. That's tying the Stanley Cup Finals to national unity. The chat is for Edmonton. The fans, though, they're in Calgary.
Weekday games, for us, there isn't an empty seat in the house with all 3 floors open. Sports brings people together.
And flying the flag west of Calgary.
It means a lot to me that the Oilers and celebrate them getting to the cup.
Similar sentiments nearly 5,000 kilometers to the east in the Maritimes.
The only team left with Canadian emblems on their jerseys is Edmonton, and we all have to support them.
They learned from last year, and I honestly believe they'll take it in 6.
And in Winnipeg, a local chocolate shop has gone from crafting Jets pucks to celebrating the Oilers.
We all know it's been 35 years since the Canadian team has won and 33 for the Oilers. So we're Canadian, we're rooting for them.
And while the CN Tower is also taking support up to new heights, some Toronto hockey fans not so much, posting Canadian team or no Canadian in Cup final. We should not be posting Oilers colors in TO, while another claims there is no patriotism in the NHL. It's the Leafs or no one else. Okay, Tom, just how important is this Stanley Cup final where Canadian pride is concerned? What do you make of the degree of support that is actually building behind the Oilers?
Absolutely. I see Oilers flags on cars in Calgary, and I wonder, are they from Edmonton? And no, I think they're my neighbors, actually. So we are united behind the Oilers. It's the perfect timing. How else, can we use sports, which are so important to Canadians, hockey, which is the most important sport, and stick it to the guy down in Florida, the guy with the orange hair, and his evil Florida Panthers. So I think Canadians definitely are getting behind this. I was reminded that there used to be a sign as you go into Edmonton, City of Champions, and I looked it up. You guys took it down in 2004. If things work out the way they should, I'd be in favor of you putting it back up again.
Yeah, here's hoping it's somewhere in storage and ready to go. So, Danielle, what kind of pressure does carrying the mantle of being Canada's team put on the Oilers at such a tumultuous time in cross-border relations?
I mean, first, we're never going to stop hearing about that sign, so I don't know what to do with that. Secondly, I do think that there's been some games, especially U.S. versus Canada, that really did exemplify the struggle. And now we have this sort of irresistible metaphor of Florida versus Edmonton. Florida being, this place where the summer White House and Donald Trump spend most of their time. So for journalists, it's almost impossible not to reach for that metaphor. At the sports level, though, I'm not sure that they're thinking about that much. They want to win. There's people from all over the world and who play on our team, and I think that's their focus.
Yeah, go Oilers. And on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you both. Hope you have an awesome weekend.
You too.